What if the world didn't reward you for what you suffer, but for what you do with that suffering? What if what you call dignity was nothing more than an elegant chain that keeps you from moving? Most people walk through life hoping to be understood, hoping their intentions will be appreciated, hoping the universe, through some poetic sense of justice, will repay them for being good. But power, that hidden language behind every human interaction, doesn't care about what's fair, or noble, or sincere. Cares about what works. In a world where so many feel like victims, Machiavelli forces us to face the brutal reality of existence. He tears the blindfold off with surgical precision and shows us that power isn't begged for, it's taken. That compassion from others isn't strategy, it's dependence. That rigid morality, when it refuses to adapt, becomes a trap no one's going to bother to dismantle. The world will simply leave you there, alone, with your principles and no influence. To think like a leader isn't about ruling others with cruelty, it's about refusing to be ruled by passivity. It's an inner shift before anything else. It means going from asking, "Why is this happening to me?" to asking, "What part of me allowed this to happen?" It's understanding that no one owes you anything. Not recognition, not closure, not even an explanation. Expecting to be understood is a subtle form of weakness. And wounds, no matter how real or deep, don't grant you automatic rights in the game of power. Machiavelli didn't write for the moralists. He wrote for those who've lost something. For those who've been pushed aside for being too proper, too predictable, too damn good. His message is uncomfortable because it doesn't flatter, it confronts. It whispers, calmly but sharply, that if you lost your place in the world, it probably wasn't because life was unfair, but because you were naive. That having good intentions isn't enough. You need strength. But that strength isn't just physical or political. It's a ruthless kind of clarity. It's the ability to stare down fear, rejection, and judgment, and not flinch. It's choosing to put your survival above your ideals because any value that destroys you isn't virtue, it's vanity. It's realizing that staying loyal to yourself sometimes means betraying who you used to be, because no one evolves by staying in the same skin forever. People throw the word betrayal around any time something makes them uncomfortable. Let go of an identity that no longer serves you? Betrayal. Break a loyalty that's no longer mutual? Betrayal. Question an idea that once gave your life meaning? Betrayal. But real leadership demands exactly that. There's no transformation without loss. No power without letting go. The victim clings to what was. The leader buries it, not out of bitterness, but out of respect, and keeps moving. Modern culture, however, glorifies fragility. It rewards emotional exposure, endless confession, the public display of pain as if that alone were a virtue. And yes, it's okay to feel, but feeling isn't enough. Emotion without strategy is just exposed weakness. And a visible victim is the easiest target of all. Showing your soul to the world without shielding it is like opening your chest in the middle of a battlefield. Sure, you might get empathy, but you'll also get shot. Machiavelli's thinking is so uncomfortable because it forces you to take ownership of what you'd rather blame on others. It forces you to admit that not every loss was someone else's fault. That sometimes it wasn't the system, or fate, or bad luck. It was you. Your hesitation. Your silence. Your fear of confrontation. Your attachment to a version of yourself that wasn't built for what was coming. And that's exactly where transformation begins. Not when you justify, but when you redesign. To think like a leader is to understand that perception matters just as much as intention. That it's not enough to be strong, you have to look strong. That even real weakness must be disguised, masked, or weaponized. That enemies aren't defeated by truth alone, but by vision. Power is a subtle game. And if you don't learn to play it, you get trapped in the safest role of all, and the most powerless one, the respectable victim. Admired for your integrity, irrelevant because of your inaction. Machiavelli isn't preaching cynicism, he's preaching maturity. He doesn't promote evil, he promotes strategy. His philosophy isn't for those who need to be liked, it's for those who understand that sometimes, being liked is a luxury you buy with your self-respect. And when the moment comes, being feared, or at least being unpredictable, might protect you more than any emotion-based alliance ever could. The victim keeps asking, "Who hurt me?" The leader asks, "Why did I let them?" The victim clings to justice. The leader builds their own balance. The victim wants to be seen. The leader knows that if they don't see themselves as the owner of their fate, no one else ever will. And that changes everything. In this world, the appearance of control is often more powerful than control itself. Because symbols matter. Because just looking unshakable might stop a betrayal before it even begins. Because projecting invulnerability, even if it's an act, keeps predators at bay. That's not hypocrisy, it's survival. Nobody sits down to cry in the middle of a war zone. Nobody writes ethical treatises while under fire. First you win. Then, if you feel like it, you reflect. Machiavelli makes you accept that being good isn't a strategy. That morality without results is just a personal belief system. That power, if you want to keep it, must be flexible, sometimes sharp, sometimes soft, but always conscious. That thinking like a victim is a luxury you can't afford if you want to influence anything. That every time you wait for the world to understand you, you give up a little more of your strength. Thinking like a leader, then, isn't about your job title, your status, or even your talent. It's a way of seeing reality. A way of accepting that nothing's guaranteed, no one's coming to rescue you, and that stability is a fragile illusion. Only those who adapt get to survive with their dignity intact. Not dignity like the martyr defines it, but dignity as built by those who are still standing after the fire has passed. Because the difference between the one who leads and the one who falls isn't the truth they stand for, it's their will to keep standing when the world stops clapping. It's not the purity of their heart, it's the courage to choose, even when none of the options are clean. And if that makes you uncomfortable, maybe it's because we've been taught to want to be good before we've learned to be free. Machiavelli flips that logic. He reminds us that without power, goodness is invisible. That without action, virtue becomes decoration. And that the deepest betrayal of all is surrendering yourself in the name of a morality that no longer protects you. The first mistake of someone who thinks like a victim is believing the world should operate according to their feelings. That if something hurts, that pain should lead to some kind of fair consequence. That if their intentions were good, then that alone justifies their choices. But history is filled with good people who were crushed by others. People more decisive, colder, sharper. Not necessarily crueler, just more willing to see the world for what it is, not what it's supposed to be. That's the most brutal difference. Leaders observe, victims interpret. Victims believe everything that happens to them is either proof of their worth or of their flaws. Leaders understand that most hits aren't personal, they're inevitable. Power doesn't punish or reward based on justice, but based on timing. That's why real leaders adapt. They don't waste time blaming the system, or their enemies, or the situation. They don't cry over the blow, they break it down. Because if you don't learn to anticipate it, you're bound to repeat it. Thinking like a leader isn't a permanent state, it's a constant kind of awareness. Every day you'll face decisions that try to drag you back into emotional autopilot. Into the need for approval. Into the nostalgia of being taken care of. But at some point, you have to face it, no one's coming. The adult can't expect to be rescued like the child once was. The only way not to be destroyed is to become strong enough to hold yourself together. And that strength, maybe no one else sees it, but the one who builds it feels it every day. It's not about turning cold or numb. It's about knowing when to feel and when to decide. Because there are moments when emotion is a luxury you just can't afford. One wrong word, a misread gesture, a glimpse of vulnerability in front of the wrong person, and everything unravels. Power isn't always lost in huge battles. Sometimes it just slips away in silence that went too long, in hesitation that cracked the surface, in apologies that were never needed. In that constant craving to be understood, when what's really needed is to be clear. And clarity, deep down, is what costs the most. Because it means accepting that your actions won't always align with what people expect from you. That you won't always be able to explain your choices without sounding cold, calculated, maybe even ruthless. And yet, you still have to act. Because there are moments when sticking to your strategy matters more than being liked. Some decisions aren't meant to be popular, they're meant to be effective. And if you choose to lead, you have to learn to carry the weight of other people's judgment without giving into it. Real leadership, the way Machiavelli saw it, isn't a stiff posture, it's a dance with chaos. It's knowing that power isn't a throne, it's a fragile balance between perception, action, and adaptability. It's moving before the ground starts shaking. It's looking solid even when you're unsure. It's making quick calls while others are still asking how they feel about it. Not because you're heartless, but because you understand the world doesn't wait. If you don't claim the space, someone else will. If you don't draw the line, they'll draw it for you. If you don't set the rules, you'll end up playing by theirs. That's where so many people fall. They want leadership without discomfort, power without conflict, influence without paying the price. But you can't change the direction of your life if you're afraid of disappointing people. You can't move forward if you constantly need to be understood. You can't build something lasting if every piece of criticism shakes your foundation. The leader who survives isn't the most loved or even the most feared. It's the one who can stand in the silence of their own difficult choices without needing immediate comfort. There's a certain kind of silence only leaders know. That moment right after doing something necessary but unpopular. That exact second when you realize you just lost people's affection, but you've secured the path ahead. And right there, in that emotional crack, is where your real strength shows up. Because anyone can lead when things are going well. But only those who've learned to carry the emotional weight of their own hard decisions can stay grounded when the winds shift. Machiavelli knew it. That's why he wrote for those standing in that thin space between who they wish to be and what they have to become. He understood that the greatest enemy of power isn't always the rival, it's guilt. That guilt whispering, "You were too harsh, too strategic, too ambitious." That guilt the victim listens to like gospel. But the leader watches it carefully. Because they know that voice can wear the mask of conscience, but more often than not, it's just the echo of a training that prepared you to be good, not to survive. The victim freezes in the face of inner conflict. The leader acts and processes it later. Not because they're unfeeling, but because they've learned to reorder their priorities. They know their worth doesn't lie in how loyal they were to an outdated version of themselves, but in how boldly they transformed when that version stopped working. And yes, that hurts. Because growing always means betraying a part of yourself. The part that thought life should always be fair. The part that believed sincerity was enough. The part that waited for permission to move forward. But no one's going to give it to you. The permission to change, to cut ties, to decide, to lead, it's not external. It's internal. And it hurts. It hurts to stop waiting for recognition. It hurts to let go of the need for approval. It hurts to realize your role isn't to be liked, but to lead. And people will only follow if you can convince them you know where you're going, even if deep down, you're still figuring it out yourself. Thinking like a leader means accepting that not everything you do will be understood, not even by you, at least not right away. It's holding your actions even when you can't fully explain them yet, but you know they're necessary. It's trusting that your intuition, when aligned with your vision, is worth more than 1,000 outside opinions. It's refusing to apologize for seeing farther, moving faster, or wanting something bigger than short-term approval. And that changes everything. Because once you cross that threshold, there's no going back. You can't think the way you used to. You can't see yourself as a victim without feeling like you're betraying something deeper. You've tasted the freedom of being the author of your own movement, and even if it costs you, you won't trade it. You know the world isn't fair. But that doesn't stop you from winning, from creating, from influencing. You don't need justice to build power. You don't need permission to move. You don't need validation to choose your direction. And then, finally, you understand why Machiavelli's thinking never dies. Because it isn't a call to cruelty, it's a call to autonomy. A reminder to stop being the plaything of your circumstances and start being the architect of your strength. To face chaos not with fear, but with purpose. Because if you're going to live this life, you better learn to hold your ground without waiting for someone else to hold it for you. And if that makes you seem cold, maybe it's just because they've never had to pay the price for warmth in the wrong hands. There comes a point in life when you can't keep telling yourself the same story. Not because it stopped being true, but because it stopped serving you. The story that you did the right thing. That you were loyal. that you followed your heart, that you deserved better. That narrative, the one that once protected you, is now holding you back. Because every time you repeat that you gave it your all and got nothing in return, you reinforce a dangerous idea, that you have no power. And the more you say you were a victim of your circumstances, the more you convince yourself you'll never be the author of anything. But you can be, and you must. Because the world won't stop to comfort you. No one's coming to give back what you lost. No one's going to rewind time and reward you for being a good person. Life doesn't work by moral rules. It runs on dynamics of influence. On movement, not intention. And while you're sitting there feeling like it was unfair, someone else is already moving into position. While you're justifying, someone else is redesigning. While you're looking back, someone else is moving forward. That's the brutal truth most people don't want to hear. The world belongs to those who act, not those who wait for fairness. That doesn't mean you need to turn to stone. It means you need to learn to use your sensitivity as a compass, not an anchor. You can feel everything, but you shouldn't make decisions from pain, only from vision. You can cry in silence, but choose with clarity. You can miss what you lost, but you can't let that stop you from conquering what's next. Real leadership doesn't demand coldness. It demands clarity. And sometimes, clarity means walking through emotion without letting it drown you. Because if you don't decide, someone else will. If you don't design your own path, you'll end up walking in circles on one that was built by someone else. If you never question your loyalties, you'll stay faithful to ideas that no longer protect you. And if you don't dare to betray the version of yourself you've outgrown, you'll live a life that isn't really yours. And there's no greater betrayal than that, staying stuck in a version of yourself just because someone once needed you to be that person. Machiavelli saw all of this long before the rest. That's why he wrote with such sharpness, the kind that still makes people uncomfortable today. He didn't write to be liked, he wrote to wake people up. He wanted us to see the world as it is, unpredictable, violent, unfair, and still shapeable. He wanted us to understand that we're not passive victims, we're active players. That power isn't some privilege reserved for a lucky few. It's something you build day by day. You don't need legacy. You don't need luck. You don't need a golden past. You just need to claim your right to act, to influence, to lead, to stop waiting. Because yes, most people wait. They wait for things to magically change, for others to come to their senses, for justice to show up, for someone to finally notice their worth. But none of that happens unless you make it happen. Waiting is just fear wearing a polite mask. It's surrender dressed up as patience. It's denial, because deep down, you already know what you have to do. You're just scared of what it might cost. Scared of what people might say. Scared that once you move, there's no going back. And there isn't. But that's exactly what makes it worth it. Real leadership isn't comfortable. It isn't clean. It isn't safe. It requires letting go. It requires disappointing people. Sometimes, it even means looking like someone you're not, just to become who you actually need to be. Not all change happens through authenticity. Some change requires strategy. Some requires acting before you feel ready. Some requires doing the right thing even when it looks like the opposite. And that's not betrayal. That's evolution. That's growth. That's understanding that your freedom is worth more than your reputation. But of course, no one's going to applaud you in the beginning. Maybe not even at the end. Because the world worships the martyr, not the leader. The martyr fits the collective story of helplessness. The leader tears it down. The leader proves there's another way. That you're not doomed to stay a victim. That you can step out of the role they gave you. And that makes people uncomfortable. Because if you can, then they could too. And most people don't want that kind of responsibility. They'd rather believe they had no choice. But you do. You always did. What you lacked wasn't power, it was permission. And now you have it. Not from others, from yourself. Because the only thing separating the ones who act from the ones who wait is a quiet decision. To stop justifying and start building. To stop chasing validation and start making impact. To stop asking, is it fair? And start asking, does it work? And yes, it's going to hurt. Every deep